It's been a very successful morning. I've had a bilateral meeting and breakfast with Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. Also, it was a great opportunity to go out to the Canterbury and actually thank many of our personnel who are here supporting the logistics around CHOGM. We've got about 460 New Zealanders here, ranging from about 120 police officers, 260 defence staff, a number of other medical staff, and obviously a number of assets here as well. And obviously have been supporting Samoa with respect to the cruise ship here, which is accommodation for many of you in the media as well. So it's been a good morning. Had a chance to, obviously we had the official opening of CHOGM as well early this afternoon. And then I had a chance with new Prime Ministers from around the Commonwealth to meet with the King, and then obviously a one-on-one private audience with him as well. And then back to the sessions this afternoon with the event this evening. So with that, happy to take your questions.
Some of the small island nations have come out swinging against Australia, the UK and Canada about fossil fuel emissions. Will New Zealand support their stand?
Well, I mean, it's interesting in my conversations with many of the small island developing states that they understand that New Zealand's one of the top 5 countries with respect to a high level of renewables as our electricity mix. You know, we're at 85, 87%. So that has been, one of the things that when they haven't raised that with me directly in my conversations with them, but clearly, we're on a pathway to make sure we deliver on net zero 2050. In New Zealand, we have a slightly different challenge, as you're well aware of, which is we don't want to be burning Indonesian coal. We'd sooner be using local domestically provided gas. We know that's not as good as renewables, but it's certainly a lot better than coal, and we need it in our energy mix given when we have dry years like we've had this year as well.
Pacific does look to New Zealand for a leadership role. Do you think that it's okay for us to be sitting on the fence when they're battling these bigger countries?
Well, I think you've seen us contribute around loss and damage. You've seen us understand this issue and articulate this issue and lead in that very, very well. All I was acknowledging was that in my conversations at the Pacific Island Forum with individual leaders, or again here, that hasn't been an issue about New Zealand's reliance on fossil fuels that's raised with me. People understand our situation is slightly different.
And how did the meeting
Look, obviously those conversations under Royal Protocol are private conversations, but suffice to say I wished him all the very best from all of us in New Zealand for his a speedy recovery. Which is progressing well, and importantly also it was very obvious in our conversation that he has deep affection for New Zealand.
He did somewhat throw down a bit of a climate gauntlet in his speech. I mean, do you think that New Zealand is doing enough? Did his speech move you to consider other initiatives that might up our green image?
Well, look, I'd just say to you that we are doing everything we can to get a higher proportion of renewables into our energy mix. And you've got to remember that in this part of the world and throughout most of Southeast Asia and many parts of the world, you've got countries that only are at 15, 20, 25% renewables in their energy mix. We're in a different position. We're at 85 to 87%, and we've got to have energy security, and that's why we've talked about gas. But if you just look at our fast track legislation, we have 22 renewable energy projects that are going to be progressed under fast track that will actually add 30% of our total electricity generation that we have today. So, we are very, very determined to get to net zero 2050. We have a process in place with our emissions budgets and our emissions reductions plan. And as I said, we've gone through EB1, EB2, about to launch our emissions reduction plan final version this quarter. But that says that we're on track to get ourselves towards the 2050 goal.
And when you say there's 20 projects that will be progressed under that fast track to do with renewable energy, I mean, is that locked in?
Well, there's 22 renewable projects that are part of the 149 that have been approved under the fast track legislation. Obviously, expert panels go through a process of assessing it, but the point is, we do not want to take 8 years to consent renewable wind, wind farms, for example, 2 years to build it and wait 10 years to get the benefit of it. And what we've said is on renewable projects, we want to be able to accelerate the consenting within a year. We want to be able to have consents that are then in place for a longer period of time. And importantly, get the benefit of that of that renewable energy into our system.
I understand you can't really tell us about what went on in terms of Royal Protocol, but could you just give us a sense of what it's like to meet a king?
Oh, look, I mean, he's incredibly hospitable, very, very charming. He was very knowledgeable about a number of issues, very knowledgeable about New Zealand, very interested in New Zealand. And it was a very natural conversation. It was just the two of us sitting outside and having a chat on a couple of seats, and I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to meet him, but also to have a conversation.
Interested enough to maybe come to New Zealand? Did you extend the invite?
Well, again, I won't get into the protocols of those conversations. That's ultimately a decision for the palace. But he understands that New Zealand is wishing him well for his recovery. As I said, he has a deep affection for New Zealand, a great knowledge of New Zealand.
Prime Minister, the King's speech made a
Well, I mean, the reason why it's so exciting having CHOGM here in the Pacific is that, as you know, for Caribbean states, Pacific Island nations, the small island developing states, our climate change is an existential threat, and it's important that that is the topic of conversation. It's a topic of conversation that comes up in my bilaterals when I travel and meet other world leaders throughout the Indo-Pacific, because if they want economic growth and prosperity, really one of the big constraints and one of the, that's stopping them from growing is actually the lack of access to renewable energy and resources. That's why you see us put a huge amount of our aid money into climate change projects. We are making, in the space of probably what will be about 15, 16 months, we hope to get Niue to 80% renewable electricity through solar farms. So, that's the kind of investments when we're spending our aid money throughout the region. That's where we're trying to focus it as well.
So do you think New Zealand's doing its bit?
Yes, absolutely. New Zealand's deeply committed to net carbon 2050, and as I said before, what people are amazed at is that we have 85% renewable electricity in our system already. Many of them are struggling with diesel generation, coal-powered power stations, and so we're in a different situation where we need to have energy security. But as I said, we really want to double the amount of renewable electricity in New Zealand, and we're on the pathway to doing that.
What was your chat like with Keir Starmer?
It was a good conversation. We talked about our bilateral relationship. Two-way trade between Britain and New Zealand is up 10%. It's one of our fastest growing sources of export earnings. That's because we've got a good quality UK FTA, New Zealand FTA in place. We talked about the UK having accession into the CPTPP as well. We talked about regional issues and whether there's areas where we can coordinate around economic development, climate change projects here in the Pacific. And then finally, just a perspective and conversation around the Middle East, and in particular also Ukraine, where obviously we partner very deeply with the United Kingdom with respect to training Ukrainian soldiers, with working in conjunction with the British Defence Forces.
Just very quickly, domestically, I mean, you would have seen the situation evolving back home around Casey Costello and Aisha Verrill, an apparent member of her family that has been working within the Ministry of Health, but that wasn't disclosed. Just broadly, what is your perspective of that matter and the Ministry of Health not disclosing that conflict of interest?
Oh, look, it's incredibly disappointing the Ministry of Health hasn't disclosed that conflict. It's an obvious one. It should have been disclosed. It needs to be disclosed. All I can say is that the Minister's working incredibly hard to lower daily smoking rates. We have some of the lowest in the world. She's working her way through it to deliver on smoke-free 2025.
Is there a need for an investigation into this?
Well, I think that's a question that the Ministry of Health should be asking itself as to why it didn't flag to the Minister that there was such an obvious conflict taking place. It's also a question, frankly, for Chris Hipkins and the Labour Party as to why they didn't flag it and come forward and identify it as a conflict too.
And in terms of Winston Peters' conduct, is it acceptable for a Minister of the Crown to be throwing a name around of a public servant in this sort of scenario, regardless of what you've said?
Well, I'll tell you what's unacceptable is the Ministry of Health not
No, I get that. I'm just
conflict.
asking specifically about Winston Peters using the name. Is that acceptable?
I'll just say I think Winston Peters is doing an exceptionally good job.
I'm asking about him using specifically the name. Is that acceptable?
And I'm just saying to you, good on him for bringing and highlighting a conflict that should have been brought forward by the Ministry of Health.
Can I just ask one more time? Is it acceptable for him to be using the name of a public servant?
Yes. Yes.
I understand that this negotiation with the Samoa government already in place, right, with what has happened. But you as the New Zealand government leader, what are you doing with the New Zealand Defence Force laid out? Has there any plans or strategies laid out so that this will not happen, especially that's happened offshore, not in Apia at all, but different in Samoa?
Yeah, look, I mean, first and foremost, as I said yesterday, and as I've had my conversations with the Samoan government, with the Prime Minister, the Acting Prime Minister and others, is that we are very grateful always for their support and actually helping our 75 personnel get off the ship safely. That was a very harrowing situation. We could have had a loss of life and we didn't, and we're very appreciative and very thankful for that. Obviously, I've conveyed many times that we're incredibly sorry this unfortunate accident has happened, but now we are very united and working together, and actually the relationship between Samoa and New Zealand is a strong one, and it's a multi-level one. And I have to tell you, the collaboration that I've seen yesterday, we have the Commodore from the Navy, but also our High Commissioner engaging with locals in the community directly, and we're working our way through a very clear process, which is first and foremost, are the people safe? Yes. Two, how do we mitigate or minimise the environmental impact on marine life? And we've been working our way through that. Some mitigations around the venting of small leaks that are happening. The major fuel tanks are intact. I was told yesterday that the wreck is now stable, which is a good thing. And now all of our focus moves to actually uplifting and taking that fuel off the ship. when that happens, I think we'll all feel a great moment of relief, because the risk then is actually diminished and de-risked a lot. Then we obviously have the issue about the wreck itself, and there's a number of pathways that will be worked through with Samoa, but obviously also with insurers and Salvas being part of that conversation with our Navy as well.
Did you hear
You're
when...
meeting with the Samoan Prime Minister Fiame later today. What conversations are you expected to have with her, and will the discussion around labour mobility, particularly increasing the quota for Samoan workers to go to New Zealand, especially considering the labour worker shortage?
Yeah, look, I mean, to be honest, Prime Minister Fiame and I had a good conversation last night about a number of those issues as well, and we've had ongoing conversation. We have quite a close relationship, and we talk about those things quite dynamically. But yes, I do expect to be able to talk about that as well. As you know, with our particular labour mobility program with our RSE workers, we are very sensitive to making sure it works for Samoa as it does for New Zealand. It's not just an open-ended system. There are countries in the region that are part of the RSE worker that want to be able to put more workers to New Zealand. There are others that may want to make sure that we control, that we've got some caps around that and some sensibility around that too. So that will be one of the conversations. Obviously, we're very proud of the contribution that New Zealand has made to make this a successful CHOGM. We have spent and invested $15 million. We've given Samoa money to be able to go off and secure the cruise ship. We have, as I said, 460 personnel here who are working incredibly hard, whether it's we've got 120 police officers here as a result as well, medical staff, other assets that are here. So, I think it's an opportunity for us to continue to deepen our relationship and friendship. But I just have to say, it's one of our closest partnerships and friendships that we have. And, there's really good dialogue that happens between Prime Minister Fiame and myself, but also our officials and our teams.
Have you talked about the citizenship bill with Prime Minister?
I have in the past, yes, and just in terms of what my concerns were as a New Zealand Prime Minister was making sure that actually we could deal with the issue that was at hand. And you've seen the New Zealand Parliament go through, and all the political parties go through our law development process, and through the select committee process identify that they want to amend the bill rather than repeal the bill, and obviously make sure it captures the cohort that was impacted by that change in 1982, which obviously was about 3,500 people from memory. And so that will be something that we will, it's in its second reading now. It'll obviously got a bit more work before it becomes law.
Prime Minister,
sorry, mate. I got to ask a good-looking man with a peaky blinders cap on.
Why are you not including the descendants? They were ratified and confirmed as in the British position back in 1982.
Yes. So the Parliament, the parties in the Parliament of New Zealand, given it's a New Zealand domestic issue to work through, have all come to the conclusion that actually it should be so that the cohort or the people that were impacted, from 1924 to 1949, are captured with this category of citizenship that's going to be made available to them. But it is actually peculiar to those individuals. There's a few exemptions around descendants that were born before 1949. Someone may be married to someone before 1949 as well. But that's the way in which I know it's a contained. I appreciate it's probably not what everyone in Samoa wants, but the reality is that's what New Zealand and all our political parties, as the bill is progressing through Parliament, and it's still got to go through Parliament further. But it looks like the parties are coalescing around that amendment to make sure it reflects and captures the cohort that was impacted, not having an open-ended pathway for citizenship for descendants.
At the opening ceremony.
Sorry. Yes.
Would you consider an international body or another country to conduct the commission of inquiry on that particular matter?
Well, the way that a commission of inquiry is set up, it's a very, very formal process under our law, under legislation that needs to be activated. It does have representation from people outside of the New Zealand system as well, and that's really important. But I have to say it's one of our most robust, respected processes. And so I think we want to go through and make sure we understand what happened. We need to be able to do that very dispassionately, very objectively. But as again I said, this is a really unfortunate accident for which we're very sorry for. But we now need to be able to to work our way through it. And it's the people, it's the environmental impact, then it's the court of inquiry. That's already kicked off. It won't be a long process. It should be able to get some solutions. Won't be drag on for years. It's something we'll get an answer for. But right now, I want 100% of our effort focused on minimising any environmental impacts. And I think that's unfortunately because it's such a big accident. You've really got to be very, very focused on the stages and the steps as you work your way through it.
At the opening ceremony, someone yelled, "Smile Luxon" during the photo. Why do you think that is?
I got no idea. I didn't hear that.
Prime Minister, 2/3 of AUKUS are here in Australia and the UK. Did that come up in your bilaterals with Keir Starmer? I know Anthony Albanese was talking about AUKUS with the new UK leader as well.
Look, it didn't. We didn't spend a lot of time. We had quite a short bilateral. We've had another couple of other conversations. We'll probably have some more tonight and tomorrow as well. But look, I mean, as you know, there's no change in our position, which is that we're continuing to explore it, whether there's an opportunity for New Zealand to be involved or not. And there hasn't. It's going to be a slow process. As officials work their way through that.
Prime Minister, can I just try one more time? Is it appropriate for Winston Peters to use the name of a public servant in the House and in a tweet in relation to this story about the Ministry of Health and Aisha Verrell?
Well, what I just say is Winston Peters was
I
right to
heard you.
raise it,
I want to get
given
a
the
straight
conflict
answer
that
on
was
this one.
there.
I just want to get
That's
a
all
straight.
I've got to say on it.
Chris
Yeah.
Hipkins has said his comments about the health worker are reprehensible. What do you think about
Well,
that?
I just say Chris Hipkins should have declared and would have known that there was a conflict of interest with Aisha Verrell, and he should have fronted it. He should have declared it. He would have known it clearly, and that's it's on the Ministry of Health. They should have raised it with the minister. But actually, Chris Hipkins and Aisha Verrell would have known there was a conflict there, and they should have raised that too. That's what good leaders would do. Okay, thanks so much, team. Sorry, mate, you go. Sorry.
For being here at this location as connection to New Zealand funding the Samoan business hub.
Yes.
Will New Zealand continue to support businesses like Taumeasina?
That we've had a long-term support of the Business Hub program, which has then spawned off many micro businesses across Samoa, and will continue to do so. I mean, I think it's a great example of actually of exactly what we want to see, and what we're trying to do is make sure that Samoa's it's a fantastic country, and the more that we can actually advance its economic development and prosperity and lift incomes ultimately for all through enterprise, and anything that supports enterprise is a good thing. All right, thanks so much.